Hello everyone and welcome to our session today on the 2025 reflection. And I'm joined today with Nigel, who I'm going to add into the stream as well here. And before we kick off and before the music ends, we're just going to do a quick mic check. So just make sure everyone can hear us.
I could hear you.
Great news. Apologies for that. I don't know what happened there. But as I say, so today's session, we are going to be talking about the 2025 mid-year reflection. And we're going to talk in detail and at length about business growth opportunities during 2025, things that have happened and changed within the sector during the year so far. And then we're going to discuss opportunities and things that may become opportunities in the next sort of 5 months, all the way up until the new year. Moving forward. So to kick things off, Nigel, do you mind introducing yourself to the audience there?
Yeah, for anybody who doesn't know me, I know I've met quite a few people in my years. My name's Nigel. I used to be a day nursery owner, so I used to run 11-day nurseries. So I've been working in the sector for over 17 years now, believe it or not. And obviously joined the Childcare Marketing team when I decided to retire. And now I work more hours than I did before, but there we go.
Absolutely fantastic. I mean, in terms of your experience, obviously running those 11-day nurseries, I mean, have you ever seen a year like this year before?
Oh, look, I mean, it depends what you mean by a year like this year. I think that the one thing that, you know, and I did a recent sort of post about this as well, is that, look, things change, okay? Yes, I've seen changes to, I've been around long enough to see changes to funding. I've seen changes to the EYFS. I've seen changes to the statutory guidance. I've seen local authorities dip in and out in terms of how interested they are or not in childcare, and governments. You know, I've seen a few changes of government. So, you know, you've obviously seen different changes of government. So, you know, the one thing that I suppose this year it sort of reminds you is that things change. And the one sort of key message that I can see coming out is that the people that are doing really well this year are the people that are embracing the change and adapting to the change. The people that are finding it tough, and there are some people out there, and you know, I feel sorry for anybody that struggles in business. Sometimes it's simply because your business model isn't fit for purpose anymore, or unfortunately, you know what you have to do, Well, I suppose it could be two things really. One is you know what you have to do, but you're just not doing it. You know, if you just buried your head in the sand, or it will go away. Don't worry. Or the other thing is that the change has happened faster than you can react to. So you need more time, and sometimes time isn't on our side. And especially with the business, you know, there's two things that are key with any business. One is cash flow. So if you haven't got any cash, you're in trouble. And the other is profit. And I know that some people sort of see profit as being a bit of a dirty word, but the way I would always look at it is profit is your oxygen. Okay, you need it to breathe. And if you don't have profit, you're running out of air, which basically means you're running out of time. And you know, there are nurseries out there that are making you know, good margins. I say that I don't think there are people making excessive profits, which I think some of the rhetoric from the government would lead you to believe. But I think people are making good profits, and that's good because it means you're able to invest in resources. You can invest in your staff, and you know, invest in those high standards that parents want.
No, 100%, 100%. I think it's, you know, this year obviously there's been some big shifts in terms of within early years, and I think, you know, the funding changes, policy updates. You know, Ofsted now, you know, the changes to Ofsted are going to come in September, is it? I think the changes are coming through there.
Yeah.
And then you've also got the added, you know, economic pressures, the cost of living on parents, and then obviously the cost of actually running a childcare setting, right? Because, you know, you talk about profitability there, but profitability has taken a bit of a hit in some respects because, you know, costs have increased. I mean, what would your recommendation be for those that are currently in a position where they feel that they need to grow their profits, but currently they look at their sort of their cash flow and they think, where on earth am I gonna make any savings? And look at the profit and loss account, and all of a sudden that they're almost at zero. What recommendations would you give, and what things would you look at from a business point of view? You know, running those 11-day nurseries, surely there's some little nuggets there that can be really, really impactful.
Yeah, well, it's probably not a very easy question to answer because there are lots of different facets to it. I mean, you know, I suppose if you look at it in very, very simplistic terms, is that if you're not making money today, how are you going to make money? And the key thing there is about, okay, well, I need to increase my fees, or need to increase where I can increase fees. So some of that could be sort of just making your nursery more appealing to parents, that people, you know, I was talking to a day nursery owner only today, and about the fact that they see themselves very much as a premium marketplace. Everything they're doing in terms of resources, staffing, they're very much pitching themselves as being a premium provider. And what they want to do is market themselves in that particular niche. They believe within their local area that they can do that. So, and I think they're also in a very good position because, yes, within their sort of catchment, that would be very appealing to them. It's getting to the audience, which is their biggest challenge, hence the discussion with me earlier. I think when you look at business models, clearly, if you're relying very heavily on funded only income, that's a problem. Okay, it is a problem because the funded only income at the moment, actually, it's not really biting too hard, but it is biting some people. The reason why I say that is because if you look at the funded income, depending on age groups, some of it's very generous, some of it's not very generous, but generous. Some of it is not. Okay, so particularly preschoolers is less generous than the younger age groups. The issue actually isn't this year, it's when you look at next year, because what you can guarantee is that living wage will go up, especially under a Labour government. You would expect that to be, mind you, there's quite a few things you'd expect to happen that maybe haven't, but you would think that that's going to happen realistically. And you also know that the funded income, because you hear about, you know, Rachel Reeves hasn't got any money left, is unlikely to increase by the same percentage. And it was very interesting because I saw a post the other day, which did amuse me, where somebody within the sort of, I can't remember which department it was now, Department of Education, justified the funded income because they basically divided it by the ratio, which was just obviously a completely bonkers way to actually work out how to do funded income. But it just shows that, you know, that there's a lack of understanding about the real impact of that. But a lot of it comes back to, you've got to look at your costs in terms of, can I run more efficiently? Are there areas I can make savings? The other thing is you've got to look at investment as well. And I think one of the confusing messages that I hear quite a lot is people get confused between what's a cost and what's an investment.
Yeah, definitely.
And sometimes it's a bit too much short-term thinking, and actually you've got to be looking 6-9 months ahead, not 3 months. And I think what you've got is a lot of people who are looking very, very short term, not really thinking about 6-9 months. If I spend this today, this will increase my revenue by X in the future.
Yeah, we're in the world of marketing, right? So that's the exact place where we are today. We are one of those businesses where we are supporting childcare businesses who want to make that investment and want to grow their revenue in order to keep their business as visible, but also to keep their business alive. Basically, is what it comes down to at the end of the day. So, no, we're directly affected by that as well, I believe.
And I think at the moment, there's a lot of fear. I think, unfortunately, social media doesn't help, because on social media, you've got the opportunity there for people to, pass on comments, hide behind anonymous comments as well, which is not good. But what you've got is a lot of fear factor being driven. Now, look, I'm not saying there aren't issues in the sector. You've got the early years voice campaigning for changes to the funding, and
they're doing fantastic.
Well done to them, because you need people championing the cause, and things have changed. You think going back a few years ago, Champagne Nurseries was the big driver. Well, actually, they're still driving it. They still are, but it's not the voice they were before. And that shows you how business has changed in terms of how you've got to change your focus and how you've got to change your emphasis and how you're going to get things done.
Definitely. I think we've changed our model at Childcare Marketing, and that's had an impact. We've had to do that change because of the shifts that have happened in the marketing sector, and that's unrelated to childcare. But if you compare the two, actually, that there has been changes that have affected pretty much all sectors. And I've got a case study from one of our partners, and she was operating at 60% occupancy. This was the start of this year, and she had an Ofsted inadequate, which obviously wasn't great at the time. And I think after 10 years of being in business, she was very close, very, very, very close to walking away. And I think she was in that place in that mindset where she had to do something. Now, I'm not saying it was all us in terms of the changes, but I had a conversation with her, and that conversation, I believe, created a spark. She went down the route straight away of facing the problems she had head on, with the setting in general, and it was more of just a push in the right direction. She brought her team together. She had a really honest meeting with her team with what she did. And this is her words exactly, and how she did it. She asked her team, what's not working and what do you want this place to be? And I think those two key questions were vital for her business moving forward. And that meeting created the fireworks. That meeting was then, I can see now every single problem that we have within our nursery, and I know exactly what we need to start looking at doing to make things better. And with all the funding, with all the noise going on with the government and everything else, all of that noise was just creating a problem and creating a fog, if you like, in front of her. And that fog, unfortunately, she couldn't get away from. And after having that session with her team, she focused all of her efforts on her team, which is quite incredible. She basically invested in well-being, she invested heavily in training, she invested in her team, because her team are the ones that actually gave her the advice and support around what's not working here and what is working here. And I think what owners and what us as business owners need to look at is actually asking our team, what is working here? What's not working? How can we make these improvements, and how can we deliver not just better quality childcare, but how can we improve our visibility? How can we make a difference to our communities as well? And the big change that she's done is she's invested heavily in her online messaging, right? She's gone from being quite quiet to having an online Facebook group that's for her local community. It's the childcare in that location group. I can't say who it is, but childcare in that location's group. And they're literally giving free advice, support. They're sharing what they're doing in the setting, help other parents on their journey as well, which, you think whoa, that's a lot of time, that's a lot of effort, but it's not. It's the things they're doing already in the setting. It's the things their team wanted to do, but she's just taken the bull by the horns and gone, right, we're actually going to do it. We're going to make an impact here, and we're going to help drive our business from being inadequate to being at least good as a setting, and also drive our visibility. So we're not at 60%, we're at 80% by September. That's where we want to be as a business. And so far, she's climbed to 84% occupancy, which is great. She hasn't had her Ofsted reviewed yet in terms of the inadequate revoked, but she's in a position now where she believes that if she had an Ofsted inspection, she believes she could get outstanding. She's gone from being in a really dark place because of all this noise to being in such a positive place by making a simple thing, which is speaking to her team. But that little example I gave you in terms of building a community and driving yourself into the local community is something I recommend every single childcare provider should be doing right now. Giving that advice, giving that value to your communities, and really using your team as that key driver. Speak to your team. Use your team to help refer people to you. Use your team to help drive that community. Use your team to be that drive that potentially, if you're in that position where you're feeling that numbers are tight in September, use your team to help you get over that hurdle and get into a really positive place. And I think that example, is one that, it was just from a conversation early January. It wasn't a major conversation, but it was more of just a push in the right direction that I think led to that.
And I think what you've articulated very well there, Ben, is the fact that, what this nursery had was almost, in a dark place, a little bit lost. And all of a sudden, by engaging with the team, it stimulated that sort of interest to actually create a plan. And, I do speak to a lot of day nursery owners who I would say that their plans are a little bit fluffy, all right, to say the least. And
I mean, the way all of our plans can be fluffy, right?
Oh yeah, but the way I'll describe it, and the best way to have a look at it, is if you don't have a plan and know where you're going, it's a bit like me putting you in a field with a bow and an arrow, and you're literally just firing arrows in the air, hoping that it might hit something. Because your plan, if you haven't got a real good structured plan, your plan is one of hope. Okay. And that's really how to look at that. And the interesting about the occupancy as well is that, you should, where nursery should be is come September, your overall occupancy in a nursery, you should be hitting around about 70%. So that's your target for that September month. And then really what you want to be doing is building up so that come sort of April, May, you're getting into your 80, 85, 90% margin areas as well. So that sort of gives you an idea about that sort of target. If you're below 70%, the issue you've got as a nursery is you may not be working very efficiently because you've got to get your ratio sorted. And it's all about economies of scale. The more children you have in, the more efficient that nursery becomes, because you're covering, it's basic economics, I suppose, because you're covering your fixed costs, you're dealing with your variables. So the name of the game is to maximize your revenue. And one of the ways of doing it is obviously occupancy. The other way to do is obviously stop your costs going out. So make sure you look after your staff. If you have a high staff sickness, that's going to cost you. High staff turnover, that's going to cost you as well. So work on those sort of areas.
Yeah, we've actually got a guide on exactly that in terms of your occupancy and looking at your efficient percentage of occupancy. And if anybody wants that guide that's listening in, simply just email us at support@childcaremarketing.co.uk, and I'll make sure I send that guide over to you. But it's certainly one thing to look at in terms of right now in your business. If you're looking at September's figures, look at how efficient you could be operating in September. Look at your staffing, your ratios, make sure you've got it right, and try to get it as accurate as possible. But you've got to all bear in mind, as Nigel said, that by January, February, March, your occupancy is naturally going to increase because you've got that time in September to actually build up again after the September losses. So I think the key things then that we've spoken about. I mean, facing the reality, not avoiding reality, I think is a key. I think that's one thing that a lot of us, I mean, even myself included, we all turn a blind eye sometimes to what the reality looks like. We try and sugarcoat things, and actually at the end of the day we don't need to. We need to open up and we need to be honest with ourselves. And the second part of that is then empowering your team. Ask your team those key questions. Ask your team, what could we do better? How could we improve? How could we be a better setting? How could we help the community further, and using your team as that key leverage to do that. And I think, as I said in that sort of brief, I mean, it's that small change that she made between the mindset of being kind of everything's great, I've got an inadequate though. How did that happen? I can't believe that happened. That wasn't right. They've done it wrong. It wasn't that at all. You know, it was the fact that you just got this missed. And the small changes that she's made have now had a big impact. You know, they're small changes with big impact. And I think that's a really key point as well, is that you don't have to make huge changes to make impact. You can make small changes that deliver a big impact. And I think it's worth looking at, you know, what those little things are, those stepping stones are, for you then to get that final result. And then I think the final thing is being proactive. You know, looking ahead. Don't react to the situation. You know, September numbers may look low now. Don't react to it right this second. You know, don't panic. You know, you've still got some time before September, and we all know that from September to March, you've got plenty of time to rebuild that occupancy level up, and then you can focus on next September and getting that dip as high as you possibly can, so you're not experiencing such a loss in occupancy the following year, right? And that's a key thing to think about, is be proactive about it. Don't just react to the situation now. Just try and think ahead as well. And Nigel, I guess, you know, to sort of close this session down in terms of, you know, the talking points and the things that we've gone through. I mean, what is the one thing that you would say to any nursery owner that's listening to this right now? What is the one thing you would say, and one piece of advice this July you would give to an owner?
Well, actually, can I give two, please? Is that all right?
Go for it.
Please forgive me. Two bits of advice. One is look at your business models, the first bit of advice. And actually, one example I will give you where I've seen, you know, even a term time setting be very proactive, is where a term time setting is operated. They're doing funded only. It's clearly really quite stressful for them. So what do? They decided, actually, we're not going to open full year. We're going to do a holiday club instead, because the funding's different on holiday clubs. Parents will pay more money. So all of a sudden, they've gone to a situation where the actual term time operation is probably washing its face, maybe making a little small profit. The holiday club, they're raking it in. So, you know, so that's a very neat way of a term time setting, if you're able to, and you have the facilities available, to actually turn that into a really good, viable opportunity. The other bit of advice I would want to give people is just bear in mind there is no quick fix. So, you know, once again, I have quite a lot of discussions with people. We need to do something. We need it now. Things don't happen that quickly. So once again, you know, it comes back to that whole thing about planning and thinking ahead and being sort of realistic in terms of there's no magic wand. Okay. So if your September occupancy is low, you can start to have an impact on it, but, you know, you're not giving yourself now much time to do something. So you've got to be realistic and say, okay, well, maybe I can't. But if I do the right things now, November, December, January are going to be good, which is key. Sorry, there were my two bits of advice. Sorry.
No, they're absolutely awesome and brilliant. You know, thank you for those. I mean, it's really, you know, I think, you know, as an ex-nursery owner, right, and this is the key part. You know, obviously being part of our team as well, but it's being an ex-nursery owner and bringing that level of expertise in terms of mid-year and giving other owners that advice and that support is what it's all about. You know, we want to build that community, build that impact, and really try to give some value and something special to the community, especially in the middle of the year. You know, some of you may be feeling at the moment like, oh my gosh, I've got so much on my plate, I don't know what to do. Others of you may be actually, things are quite good at the moment. You know, I'm quite happy. But there's a balance, you know, and there's everyone in between. And I think the key thing there is that don't feel like everything is doom and gloom at the moment. There are so many positives. There are so many opportunities still within the sector. And I think those of you that are feeling, I think there's a big opportunity, you know, for you to really just have a look, you know, have a look at what you can do, have a look at those opportunities, have a look at trying to be as proactive as you can and seeing if you can actually get any impact there. Before we wrap up completely, I have got a few Q&As, and Nigel, I'm actually going to direct all of these questions to you.
Thanks.
As I believe, I just believe, as you know, with your experience, I think these questions are probably, you know, most of these questions I can see on the list so far are probably best suited. I've got 3 questions in at the moment. If anyone has got any questions, feel free to add any comments on any of the channels, and we will pick up those comments as they come through as well. But Nigel, from your point of view, if you were a nursery, okay, if you still had your nurseries today, what would you be looking at for September now?
In terms of what business plan I would put in place, I suppose, is that what we're looking at? I think that I'd be looking at sort of, I suppose, same things that everybody else will look at. I'll be looking at my cash flow forecast. I'll be looking at what my occupancy levels are like versus what I expect them to be. I want to make sure I'm maximising. If I think that my numbers are low in a particular nursery, I'd want to make sure they're not. So I want to be doing something about it. I want to plan. And I think the key thing is that, okay, I had 11 nurseries. So effectively, I had 11 separate plans. And the challenges at each nursery may have been different. So the plans would have varied, but there would have been a clear plan, clear objective of what we want to achieve. Obviously, you've got the new EYFS coming in. A lot of that seems to be focused around welfare and safeguarding. So you can argue, well, that's going to be more cost because more rigor, more controls. Actually, I thought the sector was pretty good at actually welfare and safeguarding, but obviously more rigors coming in around that. And then I'd also be looking at opportunities as well, looking at sort of, is there any opportunity, to sort of, obviously reduce costs, look at economies of scale if I can, then look at where we should also be investing as well for the future.
No, that's good. That's good. I think those points. I think should cover that question. I think the key thing there again is it's a case of trying to be as kind of proactive as possible with what you're looking at and what you're planning. Your planning you need to have plans, and you need to have that proactive plan in place in order for you then to be successful. And if you haven't got a plan, it's always going to be reactive, right?
Yeah, and the other thing is that what sometimes people forget is we sort of a lot of people focus on occupancy, and that's great. Okay, you need to get your occupancy up to a good level, and a lot of you I know have got waiting lists in very, very lucky situations. But the other thing is that you've still got to recruit. So often what happens is that people focus on, oh, my numbers aren't looking too good, and forgetting you actually need the staffing to actually manage it as well. So this is where you have to sort of be looking you have to look at every aspect of what's happening and work out a plan, and obviously get your resourcing matched up so that you're actually resourcing at the right time. We ran a campaign for somebody recently where big push on occupancy, and the question was asked, well, have you got the staff to manage this? And it was like, oh no. So it's like, okay, well, should we not focus on that first? And it seems logical, but once again, sometimes in the heat of the moment, people are thinking one-dimensional.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think we've probably got time for two more questions. So we've got one question here, which, Nigel, if you can't answer it, please say. But why did you sell your day nurseries and walk away?
Why did I sell and walk away? Right. Well, the short answer is because I was made an offer that actually made it very appealing for me to do so. The longer answer is I wasn't actually looking to sell at all. I had a conversation with a number of other people that were having similar pressures that I was having, which is concerns over where funding was going and more rigor coming in. I had a very rich management team, and when I say rich, one of the issues you have, and one of the things that I learned is that having long-term staff is great, but actually having long-term staff also becomes very expensive because actually they expect a pay rise every year. It's almost an expectation, and you get a situation where actually people can actually move way above the scale for that role. So actually, I was very lucky that I had very, very good people, but I could see that we would have to run a bit leaner than what we were running in terms of costs. So there was a number of different factors there, should we say? And I think what swayed it was that actually it was at a time when there was a lot of people looking to acquire nurseries. I was approached, and actually the offer was a very good offer, and honestly, I didn't think I would get offered a similar amount again. Coupled with the fact that I knew that I'd have to invest more money in, and did I want to be in the sector for another 5-6 years? And the answer was actually maybe this is a sign for me to sort of do something different, but stay involved in the childcare sector.
No, fair enough. Fair enough. I think that's that's a fair and honest answer. I think from you. I think it's not the easiest question, I guess, because you've got a number of factors at the time. It may be that it just may be situation wise. It's the perfect time or it's not the perfect time. So I guess, I mean, whoever asked that question, I think the key thing there is that if you're in that position, you're thinking about selling. It's a case of weighing up actually from your personal point of view, what it is you actually want to gain, what it is you're looking to achieve from that. And I think if you're in a position where you're actually happy and the nurseries are running themselves, or you're in a really sort of secure, safe position and things are going nicely, there's no harm in just continuing, right? I guess you don't have to sell.
But one of the hardest things, though, and I will share this with people, was so the sale of the nurseries was supposed to happen on a certain date, and there was actually a group awards night. So every year we got all the staff together for an annual awards ceremony, and we laid on food. There was a sort of a certain bar tab as well up until a point, and it was a combination really of a bit about sort of talking about the nursery and direction and where we're going, but also to celebrate success. And that was probably 3/4 of the evening, together with a big party afterwards. So one of the hardest things for me, having made the decision to sell, the idea was that the new owners were going to be introduced at that event, so I could do a nice smooth handover, but the sale was delayed. So you can imagine that was probably the most hard thing, is actually giving awards to people, seeing the joy on their faces and how really appreciative they were being recognised by both parents and other members of the teams and everything else as well. And I knew that in a week's time they were going to hate me. And that was quite tough, I have to say, emotionally. But was it the right thing to do? Yes, it was the right thing for me to do.
Yeah, no, that's completely fair, and thank you for being honest. I guess everyone here that's watching and everyone that watches this back, I think it definitely for a lot of the owners, I think that probably is one of the things that prevents people from selling. It's actually the fear factor of how their team comes across them or how their team perceives them after it happening. And the flip side, I know a lot of smaller settings and smaller sort of nursery groups have quite a strong relationship with their team. It's almost like a family. So it's very hard, when you're in that position to make that decision. But you've got to do it for yourself. You've got to do it for what you want to achieve. And if the offer's there and everything aligns, you've got to make that decision. And I think it can be hard. But as you say, it's one of those things. That doesn't come around necessarily often in terms of a good offer, and I think you've got to look at those opportunities when they come. The same as being proactive with your planning. You've got to be looking. Where do I want to be in 5 years? What do I want to be achieving in 5 years? Do I want to be selling over the next 5 years? If so, how can I position the business in the best way possible to achieve that goal? And that's going to be focused, on everything we've spoken about. Looking at your occupancy levels, looking at how you can maximize those, looking at how you can maximize your profitability, looking at how you can make that business most efficient, and also looking at overall, what is happening? What is happening in my business? What are my staff saying? What are my parents saying? Is everybody happy? And if everybody's happy, you're efficient, you're profitable, you've got a good sort of, I guess, 3 to 5 years worth of good accounts. You're in that position where actually, acquisition opportunities, you're a lot more options at that point than potentially you would have if you just thought, we're reactive. I've had enough of the sector. Mist has come over. I want to sell. I think you've got a lot more opportunities if you're really proactive and try and plan it out. Even in the current climate, I don't believe that the sector's going to completely go. I think there's a lot of positive noise and a lot of positivity that's being promoted in the sector. Early years voice, as Nigel said at the start, really key. really promoting the sector in the best way they possibly can. But also you've got a lot of, thousands of us, which are all private within the sector. You've got businesses that support the sector. We're all here to help, and we're all here to try and get the sector on in the best way possible, on track and away from all this negativity. So I think that's the real key there. So obviously that's all we've got time for today. But thank you all for joining us. We are running these sessions every single Tuesday at 8 o'clock. A lot of the sessions we've got guest speakers for, so it won't just be myself and Nigel every week. We've actually got 8 guest speakers lined up already over the next 8 weeks, which is absolutely fantastic. And thank you all for being involved. You can watch these sessions live on our YouTube channel. They will also be reposted onto our Facebook group, I believe, Nigel. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Our Facebook group, and also onto our Facebook page as well.
Yeah, that's our Childcare Marketing community group. Yes, yeah.
Childcare Marketing community group. So if you're not in that group, please join it. It's Childcare Marketing Community. It's on Facebook. And if you've enjoyed today's session, as I say, we'll send you the PDF guide for email support at childcaremarketing.co.uk. But I'd also love your feedback. So if you've got any feedback or any sessions that you want us to run, or any topics you want us to talk about, whether it's marketing related or not, we'll happily dive into those topics and give you as much inspiration as possible to carry things forward. So thank you all for joining us, and thank you, Nigel, for